Mornings had always been my sanctuary, a sacred time when I could sit with a warm cup of tea and watch the sun rise slowly over my garden. The soft golden light spilled across the petals and leaves in a way that made the world feel quiet and gentle, as if it was cradling every secret and wound in silence. Those moments were wrapped in a calm I clung to, a connection to home, and to a life stitched together over decades. That morning, however, everything changed. Gregory arrived earlier than usual, a man I barely recognized anymore. His demeanor was calm, almost tender, but beneath it lingered something cold and sharp. In his hand, he held a folder. The weight of it felt heavier than I expected. "Mom," he said softly, "these papers need your signature. They're to protect your estate, just to make sure everything is taken care of." His voice, one I had heard countless times, was meant to reassure, but instead it stirred a whisper of unease deep inside me. I took the documents, trusting the son who had been the center of my world, and began to read. The words on the page were cold, sterile, loaded with legal jargon that meant little to an ordinary person but carried a hidden venom beneath their surface. Quickly, my eyes caught the details that no mother should ever find: signatures that did not belong to me, authorizations I had never given, agreements forged in shadows. The betrayal flickered and roared behind my ribs, a consuming fire I could neither quench nor ignore. I sat motionless as the tea in my hand cooled, untouched, my breath caught between shock and disbelief. Outside, the sun continued its slow rise, unaware of the crumbling world within these walls. It was a cruel kind of paradox, the birth of a new day waiting patiently while my life was quietly being stripped away. A flood of memories overtook me. I saw Gregory's first steps in this very garden where I sat now, the nights spent soothing his fever, the countless sacrifices made in silence to give him the best education and life I could. I saw his smiles, his laughter echoing down these halls, and it felt like a life separate from this cold, foreign man who now threatened to steal everything with forged signatures and deceit. The house, once alive with warmth and familiarity, now felt like a stranger's domain. Each creaking floorboard, every faded wallpaper seam, every flowerbed in my garden seemed to bear silent witness to the deep fracture cutting through my family. How had everything become so unrecognizable? Gregory's ambition, once an admirable fire, had mutated into something dark and unforgiving. He had slipped from being my son into a stranger who believed he could manipulate and overwrite our lives with lies. I felt a deep ache, sharp and gnawing, as if the foundation of my existence had cracked beneath me. But it was not rage that rose first. It was a dull, heavy sorrow, the kind that grips you when the one you trusted most uses your love as a weapon. Betrayal comes in many forms, but none so bitter as this quiet, calculated deceit wrapped in a son's voice. He had hidden behind concern, disguising his intent to rob me of my legacy. That moment changed everything. Fear flickered, but I refused to let it take hold. Tears pricked my eyes, the urge to cry so strong, but I swallowed them down. I had learned over the years that tears were for the quiet nights after loss, not for the fierce battles ahead. The pain was raw, but it galvanized something inside me, a resolve to stand firm and steady. Around me was everything I had built, the garden blooming with the seasons, each petal a silent testament to patience and nurture. The worn wooden floors I had polished through the decades. The house's familiar creaks and sighs, each corner echoing with memories of a life carefully lived. These were more than possessions. They were the story of my life, my sacrifices, the home Gregory sought to take away. The countless late nights I had spent managing finances, negotiating with lawyers to secure this estate. All felt like a lifetime ago. Never once did I expect the threat would come from within my own family. The pain of that realization was sharp but illuminating. As I held the forged documents, clarity began to unfold. This was not a random act of malice. It was a deliberate plan, a cold and calculated move. But I was no longer the vulnerable woman who trusted blindly. I was a mother shaped by years of quiet strength, a woman who had survived storms far harsher than this. In the face of this betrayal, I resolved to fight with patience and intelligence. Anger had its place, but not yet. What I needed now was focus, calm observation, and a strategy that would not only reclaim what was mine but reveal the truth hidden beneath these lies. That rising sun outside was no longer just a daily miracle. It was a symbol of something new. The slow unfolding of hope, the glimmer of power reborn from pain. Gregory's lie had pierced me deep, but it had also awakened an unyielding resolve. I sat back as the room filled with a heavy, charged silence, a silence no longer empty, but filled with purpose. Within it, a plan began to form, a silent vengeance brewed, quiet but unstoppable. I understood then that this was my battle, and I would fight it with patience, with strength born of love and hurt combined. In silence, I found the first breath of the strength I would need to reclaim my life. The silence that settled over the house after that morning was profound, heavy with unspoken truths and emotions that surged beneath the surface like a slow, gathering tide. I sat quietly in the familiar chair by the window, the forged documents still clutched in my hand, as the first hints of dawn stretched their pale fingers across the garden. Everything around me remained the same, the scent of earth and jasmine, the gentle rustling of leaves, the worn wooden floors creaking softly under the weight of time, yet nothing felt untouched by what Gregory had done. I closed my eyes and drew in a long breath, feeling the complexity of my emotions swirl gently within. Betrayal was bitter, sharp, and yet beneath the wave of hurt lay something deeper, an awakening of a strength I hadn't fully recognized before. I thought of all the years I had poured into this family, the silent sacrifices, the late nights balancing accounts, the careful tending to the fragile threads that kept us together. The house was not just timber and stone, it was the living vessel of my lifetime's work. And now, that vessel was threatened by the very son I had raised with unwavering love. Memories unfurled in my mind like the pages of an old book. I saw Gregory as a boy, the way he'd stumble in the garden, hands full of wildflowers, the sound of his laughter cascading down the hall. The nights I stayed awake, holding his fevered brow, my heart tethered to his fragile health. I had always believed my sacrifices deserved at least some measure of gratitude. Yet what I felt now was a cold twist of deception slipping beneath those memories. I did not scream. I did not sob uncontrollably. Instead, I allowed myself to feel all that grief, all that sharp ache, but I also let it teach me something vital. Fury can fuel a flame, but it burns quickly and leaves only ash. What I needed was patience, steady, unyielding patience. Anger would come later. For now, I needed lucidity, a clear mind to navigate this betrayal. So I began to observe, to listen carefully not just to words but to silences, to the way Gregory moved through the house, to Rachel's subtle glances and tensions I had only just begun to understand. This was no longer a mother blindly trusting her son. This was a woman who had survived storms, wars within herself, losses buried deep, and who knew the value of quiet yet relentless persistence. I recalled the whispered conversations I had overheard over the years, Gregory discussing complicated legal matters late at night, his voice carefully modulated to avoid detection. Now these fragments of stolen moments took on new meaning. They were clues, small pieces of a larger puzzle I had not seen in full until now. In the evenings, I took out an old, leather-bound journal that had been my confidant for many years. It was filled with meticulous notes on family finances, legal transactions, and details about the estate that no ordinary person would understand. This journal was more than just ink on paper. It was a map of my life's work, a repository of knowledge that Gregory could never hope to fake. Turning its pages slowly, I found myself drawn again into the history of our family, the establishment of trusts for Gregory and his sister, the conditions set by my late husband to protect the family's legacy, the small amendments and clauses that ensured the estate could not be so easily taken. This was where my power lay, hidden beneath layers of paperwork, deeds, and contracts too complex for a hurried forgery. Days turned into weeks as I immersed myself in this secret world, keeping my grief and worry beneath a calm exterior while quietly planning. I tended to the garden in the mornings, finding solace in the growing blossoms, the slow dance of seasons reminding me that strength often grows in silence and patience. Afternoons were spent poring over each forged document Gregory had presented, searching with sharp eyes for any inconsistency, any proof that would unravel his deceit. Every discovery, no matter how small, was fuel for my resolve. I was careful, methodical, knowing that a single misstep could cost me everything. The house remained a sanctuary, every nook and corner a witness to my silent determination. Sometimes doubt crept in like a shadow, the question of whether a mother alone, quiet and unassuming, could outwit a son trained in the law. But I would not let that doubt root itself. I drew strength from the knowledge that the greatest force is often underestimated. Gregory thought I was weak because I was silent, but silence can be a shroud, a cloak of invisibility that shields and protects. Tears came in moments of solitude, silent and private, a release of the pain that did not weaken me but renewed my commitment. This was not surrender but clarity. As the twilight deepened each day, I also considered Rachel, ambitious, unaware, perhaps even manipulated in this web of deceit. Their relationship was fragile, a house of cards built on half-truths and convenience. If I could find a way to reach her, to crack that alliance, my position would be stronger. All the while, I sketched an outline of a plan in my mind, and in a small notebook I kept hidden, a strategy born from patience and careful observation, from the deep well of knowledge I held. I knew this would not be a swift battle. It required subtlety, time, and vigilance, but I was ready. Each evening, I sat by the fire, writing strategies, noting details, piecing together a story of truth to counter the lies. This was no angry confrontation but a deliberate, quiet uprising. The woman Gregory had tried to deceive would not be broken. I was the keeper of our family's history, the guardian of its secrets, and now, its reluctant avenger. Each flower I pruned, each document I studied, was another step in reclaiming not just the estate but my dignity and peace of mind. In that stillness, I made a solemn promise to myself. I would protect what was mine with unwavering strength and quiet perseverance. This was my battle, fought not with shouting, but with the measured power of silence. I was no longer merely a mother betrayed. I was a silent force rising, patient and strong, preparing to reclaim the life and legacy that was rightfully mine. The decision to move forward was not easy, but once made, it filled my days with a purpose that was both daunting and vital. Every breath I drew was now measured against the necessity of a quiet strength, a patience that would cloak me in invisibility even while I worked diligently just beneath the surface. The battlefield was subtle, a world where words were forged into weapons and silent moves crafted in shadow. I started by gathering what evidence I could locate covertly. Gregory, confident and consumed by his plans, was careless with details rushed or overlooked in his need to push forward. I had decades of familiarity with this home, this family's affairs, and that knowledge became my greatest ally. Yet, I knew this was not a game I could play alone. The stakes were too high, and the enemy too skilled. One name stood out from among many acquaintances: Professor Helen Vargas. She was a respected legal mind, known for her integrity and sharp eye, the very mentor who had once guided Gregory through the intense rigors of law school. I remembered Helen from those distant days. A formidable woman with a reputation both intimidating and just. If anyone could see through the layers of deceit Gregory had woven, it was her. I contacted her carefully, using a number I had saved years before, when I had once consulted her about estate matters. My voice was calm and steady as I spoke, though inside, a surge of hope and fear rumbled deep. The familiar tone on the other end reassured me and brought back memories of a world where truth was my weapon and justice the goal. Meeting Helen was like stepping into a different realm. Her office smelled of old leather and wisdom, the shelves lined with towering books that whispered secrets of law and history. I slid the folder containing the forged documents across her polished desk, watching as her eyes scanned the pages with slow precision. She did not speak immediately, but the tightening of her jaw told me enough. I explained everything calmly: the sudden appearance of these documents, the signatures that were all wrong, the consequences that could unravel my entire life if Gregory's plans went unchecked. Helen's fingers traced lines on papers, her silence a careful consideration. Forgery, no question, she finally said, her voice low and firm. But proving intent and catching the forger can be tricky. We'll need more than just these. Even as she spoke, I saw that spark of determination flare in her eyes, the same spark I felt rising inside myself. From that day forward, our alliance was set, a quiet force of experience and integrity standing against the calculated greed within my own family. Helen became not just a mentor for me in this fight, but a critical partner, navigating the labyrinth legalities with a clarity I had admired years ago. Together, we began to build a fortress out of facts and evidence. I gathered what I could: bank statements, property deeds, past contracts, anything that could counter Gregory's stolen truths. Our meetings were frequent yet discreet, coordinated under the guise of routine visits and errands. I trusted Helen's skill and knowledge, but it was my patience and quiet observation that uncovered the cracks in Gregory's fabrications. In between, I maintained my outward routine, attending to the garden and daily household matters with practiced calm. This was my camouflage, shielding the storm of planning and gathering within. The flowers bloomed in quiet defiance even as I prepared for the confrontation that would change everything. Observing Gregory and Rachel during these weeks, I saw cracks beginning to form in their alliance. Rachel, unaware of the full depth of Gregory's deceit, began questioning his late-night meetings, the secret conversations that no longer made sense to her. Our unspoken tension grew in these moments, a subtle power play unfolding beneath everyday interactions. I chose my moments carefully, never revealing the full scope of my awareness. Instead, I spoke with measured kindness to Rachel when she lingered, offering gestures of peace while internally observing, waiting for the right moment to shift the balance. The complexity of family, betrayal, and ambition weighed heavily on me. These were not just matters of property, but of broken trust and fractured dreams. The years I had handed over to Gregory and his sister, the values I had instilled, seemed distant echoes against the harsh reality of cold manipulation. Yet, with each passing day, my resolve grew less fragile. The garden I tended was a reminder of cycles, growth after winter, strength after storms. Like the seasons, this fight required time. As Helen and I prepared, I began to catalog every conversation, every discrepancy in Gregory's stories. I filled notebooks with details that might otherwise seem insignificant. The way he sidestepped questions about finances, the hurried phone calls, the subtle but telling inconsistencies in his narrative. Small truths piled against his grand lies. One afternoon, while pruning the rose bushes, a chilling thought struck me. Gregory was more reckless than I had thought. His arrogance was a weapon, but it also made him vulnerable. He believed he was untouchable, shielded by his legal knowledge and charm. I realized that by appearing passive, even weak, I had given him false confidence. But now, the quiet mother he dismissed would become the force to reckon with. Each step of this strategy was deliberate, every move carefully hidden from his watchful eyes. I could not afford a slip. Gregory was clever, and his network extended further than I had wanted to admit. At night, I reviewed plans with Helen over the phone, plotting the path ahead while the house lay silent. Her voice was steady, a tether to reality and hope. We talked through possible outcomes, legal maneuvers, and ways to counter potential deceptions Gregory might try next. In all those conversations, I felt the steady strengthening of a partnership based on shared purpose and resolve. There were moments when exhaustion settled deep into my bones, and the weight of betrayal and prolonged secrecy pressed against my spirit. But even in these shadows, I found light in quiet memories of love of Gregory as a child, of the life I built so carefully. I refused to let those memories be tarnished by this dark chapter. The journey unfolded slowly, a tapestry woven from patience, cunning, and unshakable resolve. Every day, the woman I was becoming grew stronger, a silent warrior wielding not anger, but strategy. I was ready to face Gregory's deceit with the full force of truth. The day this battle would reach its moment was approaching, but for now, I continued to gather, plan, and prepare. The house was alive with quiet activity beneath the calm surface. My heart was steady and strong, my spirit unbroken. Gregory believed he had the upper hand, but he had reckoned without the depth of a mother's love and resilience, the silent vengeance that would reclaim not just property, but the very essence of what it meant to be a family. And in that silent strength, I stood poised. I moved through the house with an air of calm that was, in truth, carefully constructed for my own protection. The rhythm of my days had become a balance of many subtle actions and calculated silences. To Gregory, I remained the gentle, trusting mother, an unshakable pillar of serenity. But beneath this facade, every step I took was deliberate, every word chosen with care, and every moment spent preparing to unravel the intricate web of deceit he had woven. The house itself became a sanctuary and a battleground both. Its walls carried my whispered plans and rustled with the shuffle of carefully hidden papers and secret conversations with Helen. The same rooms that once echoed with family laughter now held a quiet tension, like the hush before a storm. Yet the garden, with its fragile blooms and sturdy roots, remained a quiet reminder that life continues, even through hardship. Tending to the earth grounded me, as I patiently nurtured my plan to grow. From early morning light to the long stretching shadows of evening, I practiced 2 lives. One was the visible routine of a widow tending her home, pouring tea, reading quietly, and speaking with neighbors, all the ordinary threads of normalcy. The other, invisible to the world, was a latticework of research and strategy, a chess game played with the precision of a master. Each legal document I traced, each account I scrutinized, brought me closer to unearthing the truth buried beneath Gregory's carefully forged lies. Money had always been a silent battlefield in our family, and quiet power often lay hidden beneath the flow of accounts and papers. I contacted financial advisors I had trusted for years, consulting them discreetly to review my estate's holdings. Their expertise was invaluable in unraveling some of the more complex transactions Gregory had orchestrated. He had moved quickly, but not fast enough to escape the careful vigilance I had honed over decades. There were moments when I removed sentimental valuables from the house, packing them away carefully in boxes hidden within closets and storage rooms. Each small action was symbolic, shedding the old scars of betrayal, reclaiming control one piece at a time. These were not just objects but memories and symbols of a life he sought to erase. Each time I placed a cherished possession into its hiding place, I felt a quiet surge of empowerment, a reclaiming of space that was his by birthright but mine by endurance and love. Every gesture, no matter how small, was a testament to my resolve. I took care to ensure Gregory and Rachel remained oblivious to these movements, maintaining the appearance of the quiet, gentle mother who was unaware and perhaps even defeated. They spoke confidently of their plans, presuming the orchard of my life was already sold and barren. Yet beneath their complacency, my work continued unnoticed, a steady undercurrent building toward an inevitable confrontation. Rachel's presence was a delicate thread in the fabric of this struggle. I detected her unease rising, thinly concealed beneath practiced smiles and rehearsed words. She still did not grasp the full measure of Gregory's duplicity, but cracks appeared in her facade. Our few exchanges held a tension not easily articulated, attempts at civility overshadowed by unspoken conflict. I considered the possibility of reaching her, of gently unlocking the door to understanding, hoping to sow seeds of doubt that might grow into alliances. But trust was fragile, and family wounds complicated every interaction. Each night, the house quieted and the work deepened. I met with Helen whenever we could arrange it, or coordinated by phone, each conversation a step further in building a case that could not be ignored. Helen's legal mind pierced the fog of deception, her advice precise and unwavering. Together we cross-examined every piece of evidence, dissected every forged signature, and strategized the best way to expose Gregory's lie without entangling ourselves in traps of his making. The tension in my chest was constant, the weight of this silent war pressing both heavily and purposefully upon me. I felt the burden of years of grief and hope colliding. The soft patter of rain against window panes became a soundtrack to those long nights steeped in legal jargon and whispered plans. Abstract legal battles felt so personal when they were woven into the fabric of family and home. Amidst the strategic moves and moments of doubt, I found strength in the memories of Gregory's childhood. I recalled the boy who once pulled at my hand, laughing with unguarded joy, whose eyes had shone with promise. Those memories were not naive delusions but fuel for my conviction. I was fighting not just property, but the redemption of a future where truth could still prevail. On more than one occasion, Rachel's suspicions nudged her toward Gregory's deceit, creating an unpredictability in their alliance. Those cracks were opportunities I watched carefully, considering when and how to capitalize without revealing my hand too soon. The family dynamics were a battlefield beyond law, where emotion, pride, and desperation mingled in ways subtle and explosive. The house grew quieter as the days stretched on, always harboring this underlying tension. Gregory's confidence seemed unshaken, yet his eagerness betrayed impatience. He underestimated the quiet storm gathering within his mother, the woman who had nurtured life and secrets with equal care, who now wielded patience and intelligence like sharpened blades. One afternoon, I sat by the garden bench, pruning a rose bush as the sun cast long shadows over the petals. The blossoms, tender but resilient, seemed to mirror my own resolve. Each careful snip was a reminder that growth and renewal required cutting away what no longer served. Just as the rose bush could bloom anew after pruning, so too could my life flourish once deceit was uprooted. As the final pieces of evidence came together, my confidence grew not with louder declarations, but with the quiet assurance of the long prepared. The moment of confrontation was nearing, a moment I would meet not with fury, but with the unwavering strength born of patience and knowledge. Tonight, like many before, I sit alone by the window, watching the stars emerge over the garden. The world seems still, but beneath that calm surface, the gears of justice have begun to turn. I am no longer a woman caught off guard. I am a force, quiet but unstoppable. The house, the garden, and the memories they hold are mine, and soon the truth will reclaim them. The day Gregory returned from what he called a brief business trip arrived with an ordinary calm that belied the undercurrent of tension I carried like a stone in my chest. He walked through the front door with that familiar confident smile, the kind that had once made my heart lift, now a mask of arrogance and entitlement. His stride was easy, assured, as if he owned this house already, as if I were the one unaware of the battle quietly brewing beneath the surface. I greeted him with the composed warmth I had cultivated over the weeks of careful planning. "Welcome home," I said softly, my voice steady, betraying none of the storm swirling within me. Gregory returned the smile, nodding with that polished charm he wielded like a well-trained sword. To his eyes, I was the gentle mother, perhaps a little naive, a stepping stone on his path to what he believed was inevitable. As we settled into the room, our conversation was cordial, light even, an intricate dance where words were measured and truths carefully concealed. He spoke of his plans with a syntax designed to impress, confident that the house was slipping further into his grasp with each passing moment. Rachel was mentioned too, a name invoked with casual possession, as if she were a co-conspirator in a game that I was somehow unaware of, but I was never unaware. Beneath the surface of polite conversation simmered a tension that neither of us dared to release fully, a tension carried in the sharp glances, the slight pauses, the unspoken intentions veiled behind ordinary phrases. I listened, always listening, aware of every nuance in his speech, every flicker of impatience beneath the practiced calm. When the time was right, I reached into my carefully assembled folder and laid the forged documents before him. The silence fell heavy like a curtain dropping on a stage, thick and suffocating. His confident smile faltered for a fraction of a second, an imperceptible crack in his facade, but it was there. I held his gaze steadily, not a tremor in my voice as I spoke. "These documents, your documents, have been examined, and they are forgeries," I said quietly, yet with the clear authority that had been hard-won over months of preparation. "I have a trusted ally who has reviewed them and is prepared to take the necessary steps." Gregory's eyes darkened, confusion mingling with shock. His practiced ease dissolved and was replaced by the cold, calculating stare of a man who suddenly understood the ground beneath his feet was shifting. He opened his mouth, hesitated, but no words came that could untangle this knot of evidence I'd painstakingly gathered. Rachel, standing slightly behind him, looked from him to me, her expression a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. She had trusted Gregory, believing in his assurances, unaware of the extent of his deception. Her silence in that moment was louder than any accusation. I saw their facade crumble, Gregory's confident mask slipping as the weight of truth bore down on him. The years of lies, the forged signatures, the manipulation, all exposed beneath the steady light of my quiet resolve. I spoke again, firm but calm. The estate is mine, and I will defend it with every ounce of strength I possess. My words were a declaration, not just of ownership, but of the reclaimed dignity forged through pain and patience. Gregory's face twisted with anger, frustration bubbling beneath the surface like a dormant volcano finally stirring. But I was no longer the mother who might have fled in tears or silence. I was the guardian of our family's legacy, ready to face this conflict with unwavering determination. Rachel's eyes welled with tears, her loyalty torn asunder by the undeniable truth. I could see the conflict within her, between the woman who wanted to believe in her partner and the realization that she had been complicit, however unknowingly, in a betrayal. The room felt stifling, charged with a tension that had been building quietly for months, now released in a flood of revelations. This confrontation was no shouting match or bitter argument. It was the culmination of a patient, silent war fought in shadows and whispers, now claimed by the light of truth. As Gregory's plans lay bare before us, I felt a strange blend of sorrow and relief. The son I had raised was lost beneath the weight of his own ambitions. Yet, the mother I was remained steadfast, empowered by the justice I had pursued with quiet strength. When the conversation ended, they retreated, leaving me alone in the sanctuary of my home. The house, once a battleground of whispered lies and hidden schemes, now stood as a testament to resilience and reclaimed power. I walked slowly through the rooms, touching the worn banister, feeling the steady heartbeat of a life restored. Sitting again by the garden window, I watched the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky with soft hues of amber and rose. Each petal outside seemed to glow with the promise of renewal, echoing the peace that now settled within me. This victory was not loud or boisterous. It was a quiet reclaiming of what was always mine, the home built on decades of love, sacrifice, and unwavering patience. The tears I had held back found their way, not from pain now, but from a profound sense of justice and healing. In silence, the house breathed with a new energy. The wounds of betrayal had begun to mend, and the shadows that once threatened to consume me were retreating under the light of truth. I had faced the betrayal not with fury, but with patience and unyielding care. And in doing so, I had reclaimed more than an estate. I had reclaimed my life. The quiet that settled over the house after their departure was deep and encompassing, like a gentle tide washing away the last traces of a storm. I remained by the window, gazing out at the garden whose silhouette had grown darker under the veil of twilight. The air was cool and still, filled with the faint scent of earth and blossoms, a quiet reminder that life, despite its wounds, continued to grow and heal in its own time. I closed my eyes and allowed myself to dwell in a profound peace that felt both new and long-awaited. The heavy burden of betrayal, which had pressed down on my chest for so long, loosened its grip. It no longer dictated my breath or stole my calm. In its place blossomed a calm strength, the product of patience, resilience, and a quiet, unwavering resolve. This house, my sanctuary, transformed before my eyes into a living testament to all I had endured and reclaimed. Every creak in the floorboard, every beam and corner carried the echoes of my past, of love, sacrifices, whispered secrets, and quiet battles fought in the shadows. Now the memories that filled these rooms were shielded by truth and courage. I thought of Gregory and Rachel, shadows receding as the light of justice shone upon their actions. Their silence and surrender was heavy in the air, a stark contrast to the confident facade they once wore. What we shared had been fractured beyond repair. The betrayal was not just of property, but of trust and family, a fracture whose scars would last lifetimes. I rose and moved slowly through the familiar rooms, the soft brush of my hand along the banister a silent claim to what had been mine all along. These were not just surfaces and structures. They were the fabric of my life, woven from decades of memories and quiet devotion. I found solace and strength in the ordinary, the gentle weight of history beneath my fingertips grounding me in the present. The garden invited me next. The flowers, tender and vibrant even in the fading light, swayed gently in the cool breeze. I inhaled deeply, the mingled scents mingling with my thoughts, reminding me that renewal was possible even after the harshest winters. It was in this living proof of perseverance that I found a fitting metaphor for my own journey. The path through this ordeal had been long and marked with uncertainty. I remembered nights when the silence had felt like a heavy shroud, the weight of loneliness threatening to undo me. Yet I learned that strength often grows quietly, like roots deep beneath the soil, unseen but vital. It took patience to weather the storms that had twisted through my life and courage to stand firm when rocked by waves of doubt. Through it all, I realized that true power does not demand noise or confrontation. It resides in the calm force of endurance and the steady light of hope. I had discovered that strength in my own heart, forged not by anger, but by steadfast love and an unyielding will. As the stars began to twinkle softly above, I allowed tears to flow for the first time, not from despair, but from release and renewal. These tears rinsed away the hurts hidden deep within, making room for peace and acceptance to grow within me. I smiled gently, feeling the grace of a new beginning. Tonight, in the stillness of a house reclaimed and a spirit restored, I whispered a promise to myself, a vow to continue nurturing this hard-won peace, to honor the lessons learned in silence, and to embrace the future with open arms. In silence, I found my strength. In quiet, I reclaimed my life. And as I settled into the warmth of home, surrounded by the legacy of love and resilience, I knew that this was just the beginning of a renewed existence, one shaped by truth, courage, and the gentle power of patience.